Okay, the trigger. The trigger. There's all kinds of stuff talked about the trigger. Basically, it's this. The trigger is the pre-swing movement that stages our athleticism and our force and everything we're trying to kind of generate to launch, to cut loose, to turn loose, to send, to hit with. So everybody triggers differently. There's hundreds of triggers out there. Some guys have big, noisy, pronounced ones. Some are real kind of quiet and just a little bit. It just kind of depends on the hitter. There's no right way to trigger. Now, having said that, having no trigger is a little tough to hit with. That is what we call hope hitting, where you're sitting perfectly still. You got no movement, no trigger, no nothing, and all you're doing is hoping that you hit the baseball. So the baseball is coming in, you're kind of reading, you're reacting, and you end up just kind of flicking at the ball. So the ball comes in, and you just kind of flick at it. It's not very offensive, it's not very controlled, it's certainly not very athletic, and we can't really adjust. For us, we're going to create some pre-swing movement, and we're not stopping to read, decide, and react. We're reading, deciding, and reacting as we're triggering, as we're in motion. Essentially, it's this. We're triggering with the idea, with the concept. It's coming. We're sending it on this pitch. We're assuming this is the pitch that we're looking for, and we're triggering to hit. It can be big, it can be small, whatever, but we're sending it. But we have just enough control to where if we don't like the pitch, we can check or stop our swing. As simple as that. Now, there's a couple kind of fundamental kind of things that we do talk about in the trigger. First, it needs to be consistent. It's the same trigger every time, okay? It also, with that consistency, let me back up. It's not the same every time, but it's the same general motion every time. What we don't want to do is have an open stance and trigger from here, and then the next time we have a closed stance and we're triggering from here. It's the same general action, okay? The same basic athletic action. Trigger also needs to be congruent with the flight of the ball. Congruent with the flight of the ball. When you're triggering right, you're timing that dude up, right? You're timing him up, and it's coming. You're sending that barrel and creating impact right there. And doesn't it feel right? When it's right, it's right.
When it's right, it is on. It feels great.
When it's right, it's right. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that consistent, congruent with the flight of the ball trigger. Also talk about floating the hands. Now, some people say you get your hands back. Your foot goes forward, your hands go back. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to say it's wrong, but if this pitch is coming this way and my hands are going that way, I'm not sure there's anything good going to happen. So we float our hands. And what that means is they're loose, they're relaxed, but they're kind of floating. They kind of go where they want. For us, really, a lot of times it starts to it's kind of coming. This little forward float, tiny bit. Tiny little forward float. If that's uncomfortable and you like your hands back, perfectly fine. If that works for you, great. Our guys are kind of floating their hands with the intent that those hands are coming. All right, they're kind of floating almost forward, almost, but there's some control over them. Now, the trigger also has to be early enough and smooth and clean enough for it to work. One-piece triggers. We see this taught a lot, and again, it's not wrong. It's just not the way we teach it, where it's a step and a stop. Go ahead. It's a step and a stop, and then it's a read, and it's a swing, and it's a go. Every time you stop, your body has to do something to restart. As a hitter, most of the time, the restart is that. That shoulder will pull out. So start and stop. Now, I've lost momentum. To get the hands through, because the hands are behind us, this lead shoulder is going to have to start the swing. If you start and stop in your trigger, that's going to leak. For us, being all one motion, we don't have to restart anything. We have great shoulder control, so it's all one motion, and those hands start coming through. So for us, the trigger is really simple. It's whatever it needs to be. It needs to be congruent with the flight of the ball. It needs to be smooth and repeatable. The hands are going to float a little bit, and it is all one aggressive motion. All right, so what we're going to do now is going to show a little bit of how our trigger works. And just fundamentally, it's going to be congruent with the flight of the ball. It's going to be consistent. It's going to be smooth. It's going to be a little early. And the big thing is those hands are kind of floating with an intent to send the barrel. First, we're going to show you that two-piece swing and how unathletic it's going to be. And you're going to watch that lead shoulder is going to have to fly out to get the barrel there. So he starts and stops. And that lead shoulder has got to fly out. There's nothing you can do about it to restart that swing. Now, we're going to build that nice, smooth, clean, congruent, floaty, aggressive trigger and send it. Right there, attaboy.